In this episode, we're going to be looking at another promise related to waiting on the Lord. This is, again, a verse that relates waiting on the Lord to hope. It's Psalm 39:7. Let's say this together. Psalm 39:7. And now, Lord, what do I wait for? My hope is in you. Psalm 39:7. So, as always, what I like to do is look at the context of any promise. So, we need to look at the psalm and find out what is being said around this verse in verse 37. And so, if you take your Bibles, you can look at Psalm 39. And Psalm 39 is a psalm of 13 verses. So, it's a fairly short psalm. And it's a psalm that is similar to some of the ones we've looked at already, where there's an element of trust and there's an element of uh, confession of sin and confidence in what God is doing. But it also is a situation where the psalmist here, who is David, is surrounded by enemies. Now, here I think these are more personal enemies that are antagonistic to David and his reign, and they are somewhat insulting to him. They ridicule or belittle him, and he states his problem in the first three verses. So we'll put that up on the screen for you. And so David is in a situation where he is surrounded by these enemies, so he has to be very careful what he says. And so he recognizes as is praying to God, I will guard my ways, lest I sin with my tongue. I will restrain my mouth with a muzzle while the wicked are before me. He doesn't want to bring shame upon God by getting involved in various sins of the tongue. He doesn't want to lash out in anger. He doesn't want to call them names. He doesn't want to slander them. And so he says, I will restrain my mouth with a muzzle. I think there are a lot of us that should probably have that embroidered onto a pillowcase, that we will restrain our mouths. We talk too much. And we do this even in with unbelievers, and that's a bad testimony as we get involved in gossip or slander. And think about this: we do this with regard to political uh, uh, individuals that we don't like. And we ought to have a better testimony. We're supposed to respect and honor them because of their position, even if personally they're not worthy of respect and honor. And that should be part of our testimony as well. Now, in verse 2, he goes on to say, I was mute with silence. I held my peace even from good, and my sorrow was stirred up. So he just buttoning up his mouth, zipping his lips, and he's not saying anything good or bad. But inside, he's seething. He says in the next verse, my heart was hot within me while I was musing, the fire burned. Then I spoke with my tongue. So it sounds like a lot of these other Psalms that we've looked at, the Psalms of confession. So he's clearly a believer talking who seems to be under some sort of divine discipline for a sin, and his suffering is so intense that he believes that maybe his death is near. We get that from what he says in the next few verses. Now, many of us can relate to this psalm. You may be in a situation that is difficult, and you look at it and you just think it's absolutely hopeless. There's no way out. It's overwhelming, and you're just feeling it in your bones, and you even think that there's a possibility of death. And so that's how he is. In Psalm 39:4, he says to the Lord, Lord, make me to know my end and what is the measure of my days, that I may know how frail I am. So he's feeling the fact that, life may be over with, that whatever has gone on is so overwhelming that he just thinks, oh, how am I ever going to get out of this? How am I ever going to survive this? And he prays, Lord, help me to know my end, to recognize that it may all be over with, and that I may not have much time left, and how frail I am. And then he goes on to explain this in verse 5. He says, "Indeed, you have made my days as handbreadths." Well, the breadth of your hand is not very wide. It's only going to be about 4 or 5 inches wide, and that's short. And so he's thinking that if you want to measure my days, well, it's like a handbreadth. It's almost over with. And he says, "My age is as nothing before you. Certainly, every man at his best state is but vapor." So there's a sense of despondency here. Our lives are so brief. There's just not much time, and it just here today and gone tomorrow. Just as you go out in the cold, and your breath is visible as water vapor, and then it just disappears. It just lasts for seconds. And that's what he is. He says, "My life just hasn't much counted." He's down in the dumps. So he brings his supplication before the Lord. He's praying for strength. He thinks his days are time, his life's about up. He's filled with anguish, and he's been keeping his thoughts all to himself, and he's surrounded by enemies, and he just thinks, well, it's all over with. And this is what he says at the beginning: "I'll guard my ways lest I sin with my tongue, and I'll restrain my mouth with a muzzle." So you see that he is just uh, in a tight spot where he thinks it's over with. So, since he's unwilling to speak to people, as we see in these opening verses, he's pouring out his thoughts to God. And even though his circumstances seem hopeless. So, you see, a lot of believers don't really get honest with God in their prayers. And he's being very honest with God. He's saying, I'm overwhelmed. I'm being pressured. I'm surrounded by my enemies. I can't even talk because I'm afraid I'm going to sin, and my life just seems to be just like water vapor, here today and gone tomorrow. And in verses 5, and it goes on to say, "Make me know my end, what the measure of my days are." So he's really down in the dumps. Let's go on to verse 6. In Psalm 39:6, he says, "Surely every man walks about like a shadow." See, again, it's our life is meaningless. And he's expressing this to God. And sometimes we need to do that. Lord, I just don't feel like my life's worth anything, or that I'm accomplishing anything. I just feel like a failure, and there's no point to it. A lot of believers think, well, I can't say that to God. Well, God already knows your thoughts. He's omniscient. And in the process of talking about that, then it brings us, like it does the psalmist, to a realization that our only hope is the Lord. And that's where we find the promise that we're memorizing this week. Psalm 39, verse 7. After expressing his sorrow, having expressing how defeated he feels and how fruitless and useless his life is, he says, "And now, Lord, what do I wait for? My hope is in you." And so this is a turning point in his psalm. As he's focused on his despondency, now all of a sudden he's focusing on the character of God, and there's this tone shift here. "Now, Lord, what do I wait for? My hope, my confident expectation is in you." And then that particular statement is then followed by a promise, a petition that God would deliver him. And so in verses 8 and 9, we read, "Deliver me from all my transgressions." So this is part of the confession. Don't make me the reproach of the foolish. He has such a sense that when we fail in the presence of believers, then this casts doubt on God. This brings a reproach to our God, and it is a blemish on our testimony. And in verse 9, he repeats what he said at the beginning: "I was mute, I did not open my mouth, because it was you who did it." And what did God do? God had physically made him ill as part of his divine discipline. So the prayer request of verse 10 is, "Remove your plague from me. I am consumed by the blow of your hand." So he is being reviled and ridiculed, by his enemies because he's going through this divine discipline, which apparently was some sort of physical illness. And in the next couple of verses, we see this. He says in verse 10, "Remove your plague from me. I am consumed by the blow of your hand. When with rebukes you correct man for iniquity, you make his beauty melt away like a moth. Surely every man is vapor. Selah." So he ends on this kind of a despondent note here, but it's a realization that we're just a creature with a limited time span. So our memory verse is a very solid one for us to claim when we are um, down in the dumps or we're suffering divine discipline. Then we can turn back to the Lord and claim this promise. Psalm 39:7. And now, Lord, what do I wait for? My hope is in you. Psalm 39:7. Trust me, believer, when we go through difficult times, and we all do, and sometimes we just feel defeated and as if God is far from us, we need to remind ourselves that we wait on the Lord, that we are trusting in Him, and God will solve our problems in His time. He is not ignorant of them. And so we have a confident expectation that God will intervene and lift us up. And so commit this to memory and apply it to your circumstances.